Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is pull. And as I said in yesterday's video, pull is really our verb of the week. And that's because there are so many phrasal verbs with this particular verb. So I've broken the discussion so that you don't have to watch a super long video, but you can instead kind of view it in chunks. So now, let's start by talking about some general definitions with this verb pull. I discussed three general definitions or ways to use this verb yesterday, but I'm going to continue that. And I know for many people, they think of that action, right, of exerting force we talked about and moving something towards ourselves. Okay. The first definition we're going to talk about today can mean when we pull something that we might be canceling or withdrawing it, right? So here it's not so much a physical pull, it's a bit metaphorical, right? We're taking that, and many times it's advertisement or entertainment that is being canceled. Okay? Now, a second way you might hear pull used is in connection to sports and games. It can be when a player is removed or withdrawn from a particular game. So, you might hear about a coach pulling the starters, right? Removing the starters from the game, inserting or substituting other players. A third way to use the verb pull can mean to strike a ball in the direction of one's follow through. Now, this third definition might not make a lot of sense. It's most commonly heard in the sports of baseball and golf, right? So I want you to imagine with baseball, right? Someone is swinging their bat, right? And the bat follows through, right? So if the ball goes in that direction, we say that they're pulling it. So you might hear that verb used if you're watching those particular sports. But for now, I want to remind everyone that pull is a regular verb. When we make the progressive tense, all you need to do is add ing to form pulling. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, pull, ul, ends in a voiced L sound. This means when we add the ed ending, we're just going to make a D sound. I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I say it. So it should sound like this: pulled, pulled. Okay. Now, I think we're ready to now move on and continue our discussion of phrasal verbs. So the first phrasal verb that we will discuss today is to pull back. This can have a couple different meanings. One goes back to an earlier word we were using, to withdraw, retreat, or to back away. An example of this might be, have the troops pulled back from the front lines? This is an example of a present perfect sentence, right? We're wanting to know if a particular action is completed, right? So you can see have, and you can see the participle form of our verb, right? We're really asking the soldiers, the troops, the people fighting in this conflict, have they moved backwards? A second way to use pull back can mean to tug at someone, again, in a backwards direction, where you're trying to move them away from something. An example of this might be, pull them back from the street. They're playing too close. Okay? So maybe this is something one parent says to another parent, right? We're encouraging that other or second parent to tug the children back, right? We think it's maybe too close to a street where a car or something else could hurt or injure a child. Pull them back from the street is an example of an imperative sentence where we're giving a command. We're telling someone to do a particular action. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is to pull by. Again, this goes back to that meaning of tugging, dragging, hauling something, right? And we're using, or what comes after the particle by is sort of the certain part that's being held. So, an example of this. Don't pull the box by the handles, pick it up and carry it. Okay? So maybe these handles aren't very sturdy, right? This is an example of a negative imperative. So we're telling someone not to do a particular action. Now let's look at another phrasal verb. The next one we'll discuss is to pull down. This can have a number of meanings. The first way to use pull down can mean to force, drag, or haul something to the ground or to a lower level. An example of this might be, I'm going to pull down the blinds first. Right? So you might think blinds, type of window covering, right? Here's an example of simple future with be going to. Someone is discussing their plans here, and really they're talking about lowering those window coverings. Another way to use pull down can mean to lower, to reduce, or to diminish something. An example of this might be, that last test really pulled down my grade. Okay? So in many classes, right, they look at a series of activities, maybe your homework, your quizzes, your grades, to kind of sort of come up with an average for an entire course. This one is saying, oh, I didn't do very well on the last one, so now it has lowered my overall grade. A third way to use the phrasal verb pull down can mean to earn a certain amount of money. Let's look at an example of this. She's going to pull down a great salary with this promotion, right? This is like saying she's going to earn a lot of money, right? So again, that's another simple future there. And I think I forgot to say the last test really pulled down my grade would be an example of the simple past tense. Let's keep reviewing some more phrasal verbs. The next one we'll discuss is to pull for. This can mean that someone is encouraging, they're supporting, or they're rooting for someone or something. An example of this. Who do you pull for in the Champions League? Right? And wants to know, like, who are you rooting for? What team do you support? Who do you pull for is an example of this, the simple present there. So we're kind of asking about someone's habit or routine. Another phrasal verb we'll discuss today is to pull in. This can mean that you are restraining, you're limiting yourself. An example of this. He pulled himself in after he started to yell at his employees. Okay, so this is another simple past tense sentence, right? Maybe we can imagine some type of supervisor getting really angry and realizing like, oh, I'm not behaving in a really good way, so I'm going to try and calm myself down, limit or restrain myself. I need to stop yelling. Another way to use pull in can mean to make a profit. An example of this. This fundraiser will pull in over $10,000. Okay? That's an example of simple future with will, right? And we're saying this is how much money it's going to make. Next, we're going to look at pull in or pull into, another way to use that phrasal verb. So you might hear people use it to talk about driving up to and stopping their car or parking their car in some particular place. An example of this might be, we didn't pull in until after midnight. Here, someone's probably noting we didn't arrive, right? Our car didn't make it to this particular spot. We didn't park it until this time. There are some other ways to use pull into. The next is to talk about dragging or moving someone forcibly into a particular place. An example of this. She pulled her tantrum-throwing child into the other room for a talking to. Here's another simple past tense sentence, as was the we didn't pull in until after midnight. right? So you might imagine, right, some parent who's very upset. We have a very fussy child who's maybe crying, maybe raising their voice, maybe they've thrown themselves on the ground, they're kicking, right? The parent, I'm going to take you away from this situation, maybe away from other people, and we're going to talk about how you're behaving. So they're physically moving that child. Another way to use pull into can mean to involve someone in an unpleasant situation. This could be something uncomfortable, something you don't want to do. An example of this: why are you pulling me into your disagreement? Right? So this would be an example of present progressive or present continuous. Right? And here's someone with this question, I think, would be suggesting, like, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be included in a disagreement, right? That can feel uncomfortable or unpleasant to be a part of it. So they're asking that question, why? Now, let's spend a moment looking at some more phrases that use pull. We talked about a few yesterday, but another you might encounter is to pull oneself together. Many times we use this to talk about regaining someone's composure. So they could be incredibly surprised and just not able to talk. They could be incredibly upset again. And it's sort of trying to return to a more normal or more typical state. An example of this might be, she's going to pull herself together and lead the meeting. Here, maybe we have a coworker who just got some really sad news, right? Something that's happened. It's upsetting. She's gonna take a moment, right? Kind of maybe process, maybe go to the bathroom, splash some water on her face, but she's going to regain her composure and lead the meeting. Another phrase you might encounter is to pull strings. This can mean that someone is trying to exert or use some hidden influence or control over a situation or over a matter. An example of this might be, he pulled some strings and got his son a summer internship. Okay, so maybe this is the client at a particular business and encouraging that business. You really should hire my son, right? So that person is using their influence to make this second thing happen. Another phrase you might encounter is to pull one's weight. When we use this, we're talking about someone doing their full share of work. An example of this: you haven't been pulling your weight with our group project. Right? Here, someone doesn't think that another individual is doing their fair share. Okay? It might be relying on other group members to do it all. One more phrase for us today, and that phrase is to pull my leg. Now, this one is silly. This is not a literal tug or drag on someone's leg, but it means that someone is teasing another person or sort of playfully deceiving or tricking. Okay? Sometimes when we say someone is deceiving or tricking another person, it's rather malicious, right? It has mean intentions, right? Here, this is more for fun, right? So that's why we've got that word there, playfully, right? We're not really trying to take something that isn't ours. It's more like teasing. So an example of how you might hear people use this: are you pulling my leg? You didn't win the lottery, did you? Right? So here someone thinks they're being the sort of the recipient of a joke. They're being teased. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and a special thanks to Luis, who has suggested today's verb. Remember, tune in tomorrow. We'll have one more part where we discuss even more phrasal verbs with pull. Have a great day.